Government Secondary School Topechi and Government Secondary School 1000 units in Peggy layout of Kuje Area Council were featured 2 years ago on Leaves and Worms in two of its episodes on dilapidated school buildings and overcrowding of classrooms. 2 years after, AD4 TV Radio made another visit to these schools to observe if repairs or perhaps overall of the school infrastructure has been considered for repairs by the FCT Administration Education Secretariat. These images leaves no one in doubt that the school structures are still in the same condition as in use by students, while the classrooms are still overcrowded. An update on FCT 2022 appropriation and 2023 appropriation on the construction of classrooms and the provision of seats to decongest schools. In the FCT revealed that the sum of 153 million naira was budgeted for the purpose, while same amount was also budgeted for in 2023. The school classrooms have remained overcrowded due to insufficient numbers of classrooms, and in some cases where the classrooms were built, they have been under lock and key for close to 2 years for reasons best known to the administrators of the schools. When asked questions on efforts made so far by the school administrator or steps taken by the FCT Secondary Education Board to build classrooms, the school aide have this to say.
Recently, we had a blown off roof in the other block there. And the PTA said that repair the blown off roof, but just for a while, because the roof, the woods inside are rotting. So it's just temporary. At times when it rains, even after the school, I'm not comfortable. My thought is always here, how will it be? The student must learn, but under that condition now, it is the season now. The moment the roof is off and it's raining, there is no how we can have a learning effectively taking place in that kind of situation. So, the issue of additional block of classrooms, provision of the perimeter fencing, and provision of computer lab, library, Omicron's lab, the science and technology lab is the building at the other side, but it's not equipped. We don't have adequate furniture for the students. A situation where a desk is meant for 2 students, but 3, 4 students are on top. You can see the convenience right in there. It's not there.
We have shortage of classrooms. Although the government, they promise to come and do the funds. In fact, they promise to do together with that of junior secondary school to be in one FCD authority. They are the one that own the school, despite the local government this thing. So, and even the class, the number of the people that weigh the class, in class, about 40 in a class, and we have 1 to 6. So all these problems, they are aware, and we are expecting them, of course, and even the playing space is not there, and that is as a result of the environment we find ourselves. This environment was called for in school, primary school, but at the end of the day, senior, junior, primary occupied it. So 3 of these schools lack space. We have library, but not equipped.
Marginalization of the Abuja original inhabitant, because we're talking about the FCT and the analysis you talked about, nature of schools. If you go to the FCC, which is the Federal Capital City, all of these parts where we are in, all these well-paved parts, you see that schools are they are well off. They are well resourced, they have teachers, the school buildings are. But where you have these problems, you talk about dilapidated schools, schools that can pass for dump sites, where people, you understand, they are in the rural communities. So you have to make that distinction between the urban FCT and the rural areas where the locals, where the original people who have the city live. And that is where you do have schools that are not well resourced. You have schools that are dilapidated. You have teaching that is poor. The teaching outcomes are terrible.
So the state of infrastructure in FCT school is very, very appalling. I mean, one will have great expectation for the Federal Capital Territory, of Nigeria, that at least things should be way better than other states. But to our surprise, is the FCT is not in any way different from other states. I mean, in the FCT we have schools where students sit on the bare floor to write. They do not have chairs, they don't have desk to write, and they sit on the bare floor, to copy notes and all of that. That's to tell you how terrible the state of infrastructure.
I think primarily is corruption, lack of sincerity, you know, lack of accountability, and also lack of supervision, on the part of the FCT suburbs. There's need for strict supervision to ensure that these projects are done according to specification, according to the project design, and also on the part of the community where some of these projects are cited. You observe that the locals, what I mean by the locals, those who are living in that community are not carried along in the project implementation.
We think that if the FCT suburb, the FCT Universal Basic Education Board is doing its work, right from because all of these contracts actually have to go through a process of bidding. You understand? Contractors bid, they have bill of quantities, and it's that bill of quantity that determines the number of cement, number of blocks they use to build the classroom. It's that bill of quantity that specifies the amount of the different building materials that will be put together to build the structure. So if the authorities, which is the FCT Universal Basic Education Board, is doing its due diligence, some of those substandard buildings you talk about will not be built because they will stop the contractors in their track. But because most times you have contractors who are in cahoots with those in authority, so you see them build substandard structures, and then nobody says anything until the structures don't stand the test of time. So what we've always advocated is for communities to be vigilant.
Join us as we examine issues of corruption affecting the standard of education in public schools in the Federal Capital Territory in Nigeria at all levels of education, and the impact on the girl and boy child, people living with disabilities, women and youth in general. Join Leaves on Worms on AD4 TV radio, where government strategies on these critical areas and their impact on the lives of residents of the territory are x-rayed. Stay tuned on our channels weekly for this revealing program, jointly produced by AD4 TV Radio and Wole Soyinka Center for Investigative Journalism and supported by MacArthur Foundation.
Civil Society Action Coalition and Education for All education expert Abdullahi Saleh provides more insight on decongestion of classrooms and tackling overcrowding in schools.
I do not know how much in total, but I know that there was a threshold for most of the projects. I have a document. I haven't studied it extensively, but I know there was a threshold for renovation of a two classroom, maybe, and a two classroom and a toilet. It was about 2.8 million, about that, and I felt that it was a way out of the corruption that has stunted the progress of providing infrastructure. I thought that would be a way out. But what I saw again is that the SBMC themselves are very corrupt, that they will ask for funds to renovate 3 classrooms, but they end up doing 2. I saw that in Buhari. I asked questions. They kept calling me after I left, asking that I put in my report that I've seen 3, and I told them that it's not done that way. Now, we are sometimes responsible for some of the issues we have in the country. We've been blaming government, but seeing now that even SBMC is complicit in this, I got worried, and I wondered if there'll be an end in sight to these issues. So yes, there are quite a number of dilapidated structures because the system does not put checks and measures in terms of the quality of job that should be done with regards to public buildings. Everybody wants to get something out of the fund. So the contractors have nothing, no option but to just mix sand and water without giving the enough cement, based on specification, or good quality bricks, or digging, providing good DPC so the structure can stand. So within a short time, the structures give way, and there are quite a number of SACEFA members again who are intervening in these areas. I was in Kuje, where some members built classrooms and donated to a community because there was no form of, there was nowhere that the children can sit and learn during the rainy season. The buildings have given way, and even here on Airport Road, I've gone to schools that were built 10 years ago are no longer habitable. 10 years ago, I think the communities also need to take responsibility to some extent. When government provides those infrastructure, the communities should now step in to maintain the infrastructure. Traditional rulers or chiefs in those communities should show some interest in public buildings.
He identified the failure of the school-based management committee to properly monitor approved budget, such as building of classrooms to decongest the already crowded classrooms.
To the schools in the FCT to see what has been done with funds from UBEC, the special intervention programs, because of these the level of the rehabilitation of schools infrastructure in the FCT. And oh yes, there's a fund. Yes. Oh okay. I think UB came up with something called the SBMC SIP. The school-based management committees, special intervention project, where the school-based management committees come up with whatever they feel they need to be done in the school, from fencing to rehabilitation to provision of furniture. You just come up with something and bring a counterpart fund of just 2%. UBEC gives you the remaining funds. We went to monitor that, and it happened that many schools actually to do some basic renovation, or making better the infrastructure, because many schools were built substandardly. Let me put it that way, because the contractor wants to make money, or he was being short paid. The structures do not stand the test of time. So within a very short time, you realize that the structures are giving way. So these funds were there to help fix those structures. But I tell you what, the funds are not what has been provided is nothing commensurate to what the level of dilapidation of schools within the FCT.
Ku kasance tare da mu yayin da muke tattaunawa kan yadda matsalolin cin hanci da rashawa ya dabaibaye ingancin ilimi a makarantun gwamnati da ke birnin tarayya Abuja da ma Najeriya a matakan ilimi daban-daban, tasirin ilimin ga 'ya'ya mata da maza da ma masu bukata ta musamman, mata da matasa ma ba a bar su a baya ba. Kasance da kafar AD4 TV Radio don ilmantuwa kan manufofin gwamnati, tsare-tsare da ma yadda matakan aiwatar da su ke tasiri ko akasin haka. Yin tankaɗe da riraya na daga cikin abubuwan da muke baiwa muhimmanci. Ku tabbatar kun kasance da tashar mu ta AD4 TV Radio a kowane mako don sauraron wannan shiri. Bisa ɗaukar nauyin AD4 TV Radio da cibiyar Wole Soyinka da ke tallafawa binciken injin da tallafawar gidauniyar Makata.
The SACEFA chief speaks to underlining consistent societal scourge of corruption and conspiracy between the SBMC and the school management as to the judicious use of the allocated dilapidated school building funds.
Not much has been done. I think the political will was not there. We didn't have an FCT minister who gave his best. And I don't blame it on him. He lacks the capacity to run the FCT at that time. So not much has been done. We are watching this year with a new sheriff in the house. What will change? Because some attention has been given to the schools. and by the end of the year, we'll be going around to monitor. We just monitored in the beginning of the year what was given the previous year. I've gone around and I've seen, even the desks I've seen that was provided by the SBMC were below standard. And I asked questions, education is not cheap. If you have to provide beautiful furniture, it costs some money. And let me also say that schools need to up their game with regards to protecting the environment. You cannot build schools in open fields where there are no trees that will provide windbreaks. That is why almost every school has blown off roof. Almost every school in the FCT, almost every school, the roofs are being blown off. And when it starts with one sheet, they do not have funds to maintain, to put back that one sheet. So before you know, a second sheet, a third sheet, and then the walls are already getting wet and giving way. I think we need to imbibe a culture, maintenance culture, where the community should come in. Every community in this country has somebody in a position of influence where he can attract resources, little resources, to maintain the structures. And I think this should be the next step, where communities should start taking responsibility for public buildings within their area.
There are three major things responsible for it. The first one is poor budgeting. Year in, year out, there's been advocacy in regards to increased budgeting for education, and which we've not gotten, satisfying response to over the years. And the second one is the poor culture of maintenance. So even the few infrastructures that used to be in place are poorly maintained. So you go to schools and are getting worn out. There are no replacement. Shares desks get spoiled, and you go to a so-called computer laboratory, and you see that all the computers there are not functioning because there are no maintenance. The maintenance culture is really bad. Of course, it's the issue of corruption, which is endemic.
It's been one of those issues that has held back the potential of the people for development, and it's there we have done work to track the resources that go into sectors like basic education, and you can see that there's a huge deficit, and there's a huge gap between resources that have been committed into the process and the outcomes that you have seen. And so that's where the work of civil society comes in as voice actors. So what we encourage communities to do is also to be able to report on some of these things, train them, give them the skills to be able to report on if a school is in your community, a contract is awarded and it has not been done. You have the skills to use things like freedom of information to invoke your rights and ensure that the contractor returns back to site. And then we as civil society, we should be able to amplify those voices. Then we have teeth actors like the anti-corruption agencies, which can then come in to hold contractors accountable. Like the ICPC, for example, does tracking of constituency projects. Some of the constituency projects are actually school projects.
Why we have a lot of corruption in Nigeria is because the citizens are doing less in terms of working with the government. Because if the citizens are close to the government, the citizens will always remind government of their responsibility. They will always remind them of their tax. But imagine when I'm a director in charge of WASH in a department, educational department, and nobody comes to ask, nobody comes to make a demand about reports, about what we do in the educational institutions, and at the end of the year, I'm seeing more than 10 billion naira there left for me, or 1 billion, nothing to do, then the next year, then definitely that person will start getting tempted to steal the money. That's where corruption comes. But if people come, if there is a monitoring and reporting system, effective monitoring and reporting system, then we'll have less corruption. And we'll have...
Making public school, especially at the basic level, very, very attractive is very simple. We have the resources. We have what it takes to make sure that our children are being protected. But because of corruption, wickedness, greed, nonchalant attitude of it is not my own, my child is not there, whatever that happens to those children is not my business. That is what is keeping us here. How much does it cost to do a perimeter fence? If an allocation like for UBEC funding
States supposed to put in their own counterpart fund before UBEC puts their money. Unfortunately, what most states are doing, immediately they put their own 5% counterpart fund in the account, and UBEC brought their own. They take the whole money, and nobody will account for it. Nobody will sanction them until when that state governor leaves the office. It doesn't make sense. You must account for the money you are giving to make sure that all these infrastructures, building fences, making sure that these children have toilets, making sure that there is enough wash facilities in the school. It has been budgeted, and this money has been given to you. So even if all is not given to you, can you account for the little that was given to you? But no, in our own case, these people will sit down, eat the cow, eat the aboki, and also eat the rope, and nobody is talking. It is so alarming. If there's going to be a law that states that if so amount is given to you for education, if you default, this is what is going to happen to you instantly. Because every other sector is embedded in education. If we get the education system in Nigeria right, I put it to you that every other system will be fine.
Interestingly, when you take a trip, just 20, 30, 40, 50 kilometer trip away from the capital, what you see is dilapidated building. Sometimes this building, there are no roof, no access to wash facilities, so no toilets, no water. So what it means is if there's a girl going to that school, anytime she's on her menses, she would lose 3 to 6 days important class. So for me, my assessment is basic education is not doing well. Today, that's why you have parents not even sending their kids or their wards to public primary school. When you look at data, states are accessing this money, but when you go on the ground, the releases is not commiserable to what you find on the ground. For me, 1, corruption is a big part of what is responsible. 2 is the fact that nobody is looking at the implication of the fact that we're not investing in Nigeria's future. Because so today, I can speak to you because there was a deliberate investment in my basic education. Because for everybody who is successful, it means the foundation was solid. And basic education is the foundation of every child. So the leaders that we have today do not see investing deliberately in basic education as the future of Nigeria. Because if we don't get it right with basic education, the child would not be able to assimilate knowledge in secondary and in university. So it is just sad and unfortunate that we have crops of leaders that don't see basic education as a priority and as an investment for our future. So the case of the FCT is interesting because the budget of the FCT is passed by the Senate. It is only the FCT that does not have a legislative arm or an independent legislative arm. The 36 states have the State House of Assembly, but the FCT's case, it is the Senate that provides oversight or approves their budget, and then the FCTA implements this budget. That alone is a gap because it does not provide a framework for legal and regulatory and any form of transparency and accountability. So that's why today you hardly find publicly available information about appropriation and releases.
And like I mentioned earlier, I'll talk about the issue of access. You have several communities in the FCT where children, including girls, trek for 2 hours, in some cases 3 hours before they can access schools. So even before talking about a school is dilapidating, are there even enough schools to go around the communities? So it's a big problem which would only be solved if the subnational governance framework is well taken care of. What I mean by the subnational governance framework is that other states, they have a state governor and they have a state house of assembly. But in the FCT, you only have a minister who is not elected. The minister is an appointee of the president. So how would a community that does not have a school be able to reach that? The peculiar structure of marginalization that has held the FCT original inhabitants back is what you see playing out in the very high extent of dilapidation you see in their schools. So
for Authority of Government Secondary School Topechi and Government Secondary School 1000 unit, no dilapidated funds have so far been released to the school management or DSBMC for building extra classrooms or rehabilitating school buildings. These inquiries into the issues of dilapidated and overcrowded classrooms has revealed emerging challenges hindering learning environment for pupils and students in FCT Public Basic Secondary School.